everyone, in today's video I'm going to share 3 early phonological awareness activities that you can try out with your kindergarten and first grade students. Now typically when talking about phonological awareness, the first skill that comes to most teachers' minds is rhyming, and being able to identify and produce rhymes is a phonological awareness skill, and I actually made a whole video about it that looks like this with some ideas and activities there. But in today's video I'm going to share 3 different phonological awareness activities that you may want to start introducing with your kids. So let's just dive in, give this video a like, subscribe to my channel, and let's go! Phonological awareness activity number 1 for students to practice is to identify words in a spoken sentence. Now, this type of activity may seem relatively simple, but it is one that is important for your students to really identify different parts of speech as someone is talking. Your young students need to be able to hear a sentence and be able to kind of isolate and separate the different words that make up that sentence. Students are going to hear really fast talkers like myself. They're going to hear slow talkers. They're going to hear all different accents and dialects where the English language might sound a little different than they're used to. So this practice of this basic getting students to identify the different words is where we need to start. Now, one of the easiest ways you can have students practice this is simply by saying a sentence out loud, and then they are going to repeat it, and using some sort of manipulative, they will segment each word and kind of mark it with their manipulative, just like we would when we are segmenting sounds or phonemes in a word. So students can do this either by squishing Play-Doh, or they can move a counter or cube every time they hear a word in a sentence. So you might say aloud, "The dog sat." And they will take their cubes or their counters and they will repeat the sentence while moving up each word. The dog sat. They'll then move their counters back down and you will try it again with a trickier sentence. This time you might say, "The dog sat on the mat." And you can go ahead and repeat this a few different times before moving on to a different phonological or phonemic awareness activity. Now, just a couple things to point out there when I was doing that, because it was something I was even noticing within myself. When you are dictating these sentences, you want to be sure that you are speaking normally. You don't want to slow down your sentences so students can more easily identify the words, right? So I was recognizing as I was trying to say the sentence aloud, even though there aren't even students here, that I was kind of slowing it down a little bit too much. You want to say it just as if you were talking to a friend or reading a book. You want to try to say it nice and smoothly, so that way students are better able to practice this skill. Phonological awareness activity number 2 is to have students practice alliteration. Now, alliteration is repetition of the same initial sound, either with 2 words or more, or 2 syllables or more in a row. So with alliteration, you're getting students to really identify and produce more matching initial phonemes. This can be really fun for kids, so there's a few different ways I like to have them practice their alliteration. Activity number 1 is to have students come up with another word that has the same sound as their name. And it could be an adjective, it could be a verb. So they would first need to identify the initial phoneme in their name. So mine would be S for Susan. And then they have to think of a word that can go with it. So I might say silly Susan, surprising Susan, really anything that also starts with that S sound. And when I'm modeling this with my class, of course, I would model it doing it just the way I did right now. I would explain what alliteration is and then give some examples using my own name. And I would try to have the class brainstorm some other ones that might be fun. For this, you can go around the class and have students share their own alliteration that they came up with to go with their name. And if any students are stumped, we can all brainstorm together to help them. Now, just a quick note about using the names. You do want students to recognize that we are finding a match for the initial phoneme and not the initial letter. So for example, my son's name is Theo. So when he was coming up with some alliterative words that he could use with Theo, he said thrilling. I said throwing, and we pretended he was throwing a ball. You don't want him to get confused with the t with the T, even though that's the letter that starts his name. Same would apply with names like Juan or Cindy. Even though they start with a J and a C, you want them to think of an alliterative word that starts with the same sound, not letter. Another way I love to have students identify alliteration is by reading some great stories. One of my favorites is this one right here. It is called Sammy Skunk's Super Sniffer, Animal Antics A through Z. Now, this is a really cute story within itself, but the main point of this book is to really highlight all the alliteration that you hear on every single page. There's even a page in this book where there's a bunch of animals and all of their names are alliterative. So it would be like Tony Tiger or Polly Penguin, little things like that. And it's a fun one and really an easy way for students to start identifying what alliteration really is. Another fun way for your early learners to practice alliteration is for you to pick an animal, let's say a penguin, and you tell them that the penguin can only eat foods that begin with the same letter as penguin. So they would have to identify penguin begins with P. And then we can brainstorm some fun foods that the penguin can eat, like Pop-Tarts, popcorn, pizza, anything like that. You can of course do that whole group, and if your students are ready for it, you could put them in small groups, give them each a different animal and have them brainstorm all different types of food that that animal can eat, and then you can bring it back to the class to discuss. And phonological awareness activity number 3 is to have students practice blending onset and rhyme. Now, just to clarify, in case anybody doesn't know, every syllable has 2 different parts, the onset and the rhyme, and the onset would be the part before the vowel, so any letter or letters that come before the first vowel. Then the rhyme would include the vowel and the rest of the consonants or other letters in that syllable. For example, ball would be b-all. When you're having students practice an activity like this one, I really like to have them connect the sounds. So you can do that in a few different ways. You might say, what word does this make? B-all. Blend them together to make the word. And I would have them actually use their hands. They can use fists, they can do their hands like this, and I would have them say b-all ball. Another visual and tactile way I like to have students practice this is by using connecting cubes. So you might again use the word ship. And you might say, okay, I'm going to say the onset and the rhyme. I want you to go ahead and combine the 2 to make a word. I want you to blend the sounds together. What word does it make? Ip, ship. And they would physically put their cubes together to make a word. Chur, uck, truck. K, at, cat. You get it. Now, I do want to highlight here that these are all phonological awareness activities, so you're not introducing the letters or graphemes that actually make these sounds yet. You are simply doing this as an auditory process for students to go ahead and identify things like alliteration or things like onset and rhyme. But depending on your students' needs and their skill level where they're at, you really only want to do these types of activities for about 5 minutes a day. Once your students are ready to introduce those graphemes, you want to do that with them. So if you're practicing onset and rhyme and you're having them combine b, at, bat, k, at, cat, and your students are ready because they've learned what all of those sounds make, you can actually give them onset and rhyme cards, like b would have a B and the at part would have AT, and you can have them use those tiles or cards to go ahead and make their own words and decode them as well. That would be more of a phonics activity, but you do want to make sure you're giving those students that next step to practice the sounds that they're learning as well. But again, that's a whole different video. Right now we're just talking about phonological awareness. So there were 3 different phonological awareness activities that you can try with your students. And like I said, if you're wondering about some different rhyming activities, I had that video right there you can check out after this one. As always, I do hope you enjoyed this video. Give it a thumbs up if you did, so I know. Make sure you're subscribed to my channel, and I will see you in the next one. Bye, guys.